As an introduction, we like to acknowledge that our mission at Vose Library is to advance learning, inspire curiosity, enrich lives, and promote community. And with that in mind, let me introduce our guest. Carol Dana is mother of 6 children and grandmother of 14 grandchildren. She spends her time teaching, language, writing, doing crafts, spending time with grandchildren, basket making, and walking with her dog, who I just had the great honor of meeting. And his name is, let me see how I do, Carol. Shakanum. Shakanum. Okay. Shakanum. Which means my soul?
Yeah.
Yes. She tells traditional stories. She's researched and collaborated on publishing Transformer Tales Volume 1 and 2 as told by Newell Lyons. And I'm so excited to have her with us tonight. So without further ado, please help me welcome Carol Dana. I'm going to stop sharing, Carol, and the screen will be all yours.
Okay. Louise Dana, Nujaya, I'll now be Menahan. My name is Carol Dana. I'm from Indian Island. And it's a long road how I got into storytelling and language. Well, my education has been in Catholic school till I went to college. And I first heard about storytelling at UMO on campus by a man who lived with the Navajo. And he said they did storytelling in winter also. And in 1981, I believe, I worked for Frank Siebert, who devised a writing system for our language. And my job was to put entries for the dictionary from index cards that he made from his books. And I had heard language around, my family knew a few words and I heard some people speak it, and I found that his writing system was true to the language. And I also lived at the Passamaquoddy Reservation in 71, 72, which was like immersion language situation when I think about it. And I worked for that program till 85. I had decided to go to college so I could teach the Penobscot. But anyway, I got into the writing system. I became familiar with it. I can read Penobscot. I understand what I read, and it's great. So the storytelling, Frank told me, see, we lived on these islands in the river. We live on Indian Island. We own 146 islands in the river, which we've always retained. And there were other communities here a long time ago. And Frank came around in the 1930s. And as a college student, I start writing down the language. And he told me about the people who lived at O'Lemon Island, used to walk to Lincoln Island to tell these stories. Even though they had told them the last year, they had to tell them again. And that's what they did. And that's how I knew our people had storytelling too. And every clan had their own stories. And there were 22 clans of the Penobscot. So that's a lot of stories. And I worked for the Penobscot Cultural Historic Preservation Department. And I started going to the university library, the Fogel Library. And I researched stories from there that I found, about 200 stories. And there was a librarian at Old Town back when I worked for Frank. I knew Valerie Osgood, and she wanted me to tell stories. And I just happened to mention it to someone at Bangor Public Library. I held on to that thought for a long time, and I wasn't really in a position to do it in the 80s, but I feel like, I am now. So we started there, and it's worked out tremendously for us because we can't gather to do the stories now, due to COVID and bad weather. But I was at the Bangor Public Library. I went there every, I think it was Wednesday about 2, and we'd sit and we'd have a little row of chairs and would tell the story, and we had a group there. And then it got into Zoom, And I was doing that one year, and then this year, Maine Humanities Council has a discussion grant that Candace applied for, which we got. So that's how we've been doing it now. So I want to tell a little bit about, there's a story I have about story. And it's about a young man, a hunter that went out every day, to get food. And he came home with some birds one day, and he was sitting there on the ground fixing his arrow points when he heard a voice say, "Would you like me to tell you a story?" And he looked all around. There was no one there except this large stone. And he agreed. So he said, "First, you have to give me something for telling you a story." So he left one of his birds there, and the stone told him a story. He said, "Come back again tomorrow." And he did, and they did the same thing. And he left some of his birds for the stone. So his friend said, "Where do you go every day?" I said, "I don't see you around." And he told him what he was doing. He said, "Would you like to come along?" And he said he would. So they were both there. And pretty soon the whole village knew the stone was telling stories, and they all turned out for it. And they forgot how cold they were, and they forgot how hungry they were, when they were telling stories. And the stone told the young man, he said, "When you get older and you can't hunt anymore, these stories are going to help you. So I want you to remember what I'm telling you." Oh, and when he first said, "Do you want to hear a story?" the boy said, "What is a story?" And he told him it's about how the way things used to be, it's about the people in the land above and the magic that we had. And that's what he did. And he did remember the stories, and he carried them on for his people years after that. So that's how I got started. And we only told stories in the winter. It's a sacred cycle. I sometimes put tobacco out, which I did today, for the characters in the story. And I've read that stories is our cosmogony. And cosmogony is what fuels your universe. So these stories have to be told, and that's what our people did, and it transmits our cultural values and mores to the young people, and that's how they learn, is through the storytelling, which I think is good, because nobody's preaching and nobody's pointing the finger at anybody, and they learn about their people's ways. Oh dear. I'll tell the story about Madal Linawag, our shamans, and the story takes place at Pushaw. They go, it says, when they're about to be defeated, they can change shape. And anyway, that's what the story is about. They jumped in the water, they dove in, and they turned around, and when they emerged, they came out beaver, a muskrat, a otter, a loon, and a mink. And it says they were all happy to show each other their powers. It goes like this. Nawa, Madal Linawaka, Gwet Handoldawag, Pigwaduk, Chawapik Daho, Nagamuskadasi Gad, Damakwe, Nagachigada, Gagamquigadahin, Gulbihazo, Naga, Muskadasi Gar, Musqueso, Chigada, Gamquigadahin, Gulbihazo, Nagachuapictaho, Muskadasi Gar, Giwanik, Chigada, Gulbihazo, Naga Muskadasi Gar, Madawila, Walida Hazoldawag, Agwet Handoldawag. And that's the story. And I like it because they were all happy for each other, for the way they showed each other their power. And the other story, well, those are the two stories I had that I thought I could tell. We have a book that came out that I worked on, Margot Lukens, Connor Quinn, and I. And these stories were told, 100 years ago by Newell Lion to Frank Speck, and he worked with the elders to tell those stories. There's 31 in that series. And Margot found 8 or 9 that we never knew we had. So that'll be volume 2 and volume 3. And I want to talk a little bit about these stories that are in here, because people don't realize that grandmothers were highly regarded back in our day. They ruled right along with the Sagama, the chiefs, and they had the say over everything that happened in the family. And I know that because we have another story that says Wadayua Sagama Naganuka Misanawak. We had the chiefs and the grandmothers, and that tells about our life and how it went. So she knows what the people need. She knows what the problems are. And she's raising Guskabe, who's a young boy here. In the first stories, he goes out and kills a deer, and then he kills a bear, and he doesn't even know what it is. Well, first of all, he asked his grandmother for the bow and arrows. So she did, and then he wanted her to make him a canoe, which she did. So she had the knowledge, and she helps him. Well, they help each other, and she helps the people when she goes to Guskav and tells him, what's going on. And he's all about balance. He brought balance to our life and to the landscape and made things so that we could live in a good way. So that's what this book is about. It's called Still They Remember Me. And that's New Lions on the cover. So that's quite a collection of stories right there. 31 and 9. So there'll be 40 in all. And volume 2 will be the ones that we didn't know we had. And I think we'll illustrate them too. And then volume 3, we're thinking of doing like graphic novels. But that's how my education, I guess, outside of formal education brought me around to the language and the stories, because everybody likes to get back to their values, right? We would too. And this is a way we can do it, because we can't right now because of COVID. So I'm so grateful to Bangor Public Library and Maine Humanities Council for helping us tell these stories, and get them out to the people. So I could tell a little bit about the stories in that book.
Are any of them short enough, Carol, to actually read?
Oh yeah, sure.
Terrific.
I got the book right here.
All right.
You want me to read you the first one?
Yes, please.
Okay, that's where, oh my goodness. Right here, Esquart and Miquita Hammock. My story, Guskabe, they lived there, Woodchuck and her grandson, Guskabe. Woodchuck is the grandmother. She raised him and she taught him everything, how to hunt and also how to fish for fish so that they could live. Eventually, Guskabe was big enough to be able to use a bow and arrows. And to his grandmother, he said, "Make me bow and arrows, so I want to hunt deer. I am already tired of rabbit meat and fish meat." Then he walked, wandering, and killed a deer. Key Woodchuck was happy. She was so very proud of her grandson. Again, when he walked, wandering, then he killed a bear. When he arrived walking, he brought the bear on his back. Then he said to his grandmother, "Who is this?" Woodchuck jumped up from sitting and struck up a dance. She was so happy. Then she said to him, "My grandchild, it's a great animal that you killed, a bear." So finally, now we live well. There is lots of grease. We will eat well together. My grandchild is going to be a very great in power. I think greatly of him. He will do good for our descendants as he goes on living, because there are all kinds of dangers seeking after them in the future. There are all kinds of animals seeking after him, after them. and also the rivers. He will be able to fix them so that they are not so dangerous. Then Gluskabe said to his grandmother, I want you to teach me how a canoe is built so that I will hunt ducks. Then Woodchuck said to him, for sure, I will teach you, my grandchild. Then they built a canoe. Finally, they finished the canoe. Gluskabe was happy. Right away, he set off by boat. Then he duck hunted. He got lots of ducks. Eventually, at one point, a lot of wind came up. He couldn't really paddle out in the water. So he walked, wandered in the woods, and he hunted. He thought, it seems very slow going how I am hunted. Then he walked back. Then he started off to his house. So in that story, I like to mention that we couldn't live on just rabbit meat anyway. There's such a thing as rabbit starvation, or the fish either. I don't think they have much fat in them because we need fat to live. And that's the first story of them, how he got his bow and arrows and what he needed. The second one is about him. He's laying down on his bed and he's starting to sing, and he's saying how we wanted a miganagwe made of hair. It's like a bag in order to get the animals. This is a little bit where he's starting to be like a trickster, because he's thinking of all that they have to do, you know, to get food, and he's trying to make it easy for his grandma. So she made a deer hair bag, and when she finished it, she threw it to him. But he kept on singing, and I'm not familiar with this, but apparently it must be a way they asked for something. So he kept singing, and she made him another one. She threw it to him, and he just kept right on singing. And then when she pulled out her hair, she made a miganagwe of woodchuck hair, and finally he was happy. So he went out, he told all the animals, get inside my bag here, and here you won't see the world coming to an end. So he tricked all the animals into getting inside his bag, and he closed it up. He took it to grandma and he said, see here, now we don't have to work so hard, you know, getting our food. Here's all these animals I got for you. And she went and looked at it, and she said, Ata Galelagu Gwenas, you have not done well. She said, we can't just have whatever we want and all of what we want. You know, we have to think of our descendants in the future. So he told him, my grandchild, our descendants depend on you. She said, don't do that. Instead, you must do whatever will do good for our descendants. And he believed his grandmother. He told the Golame, you speak the truth. So he walked out and opened the bag. He told the animals, walk out. And I think they say Magia Ba's in there. He said the danger had already gone by. So the animals got to leave. Yeah. One lady mentioned that he's known as a trickster, and there's a couple instances where he tends to be that way, but it's a young Gluskabe, and he takes his grandmother's counsel. She guides him in what he has to do. So there's good little stories in there, and they're in Penobscot and they're in English. So hopefully some of our students will pick up on that. I listened a lot to Steve Krashen. He's a second language teacher from California. And he said, if you can read in a language, you can speak it. And I always liked hearing that, you know, I believe it's true. So hopefully our children will learn this. And I wanted to make little children's books too for them in the future. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
I don't have any in the chat yet, but certainly, Carol, if you're ready, people can unmute and ask away if people are comfortable doing that. Or you can put your questions in the chat room for Carol and I can read them to her. I appreciate you reading because they're just lovely stories, and you know, you're able to tell us a little more than what's on the page. So that's
right. Yeah,
that's the real gem. So thank you. I was going to ask you if that was written in Penobscot as you're reading.
Yes,
So you're transcribing that as you're reading it to us.
some of it, this is how I learned the language from the stories. Like on one trip he's going on, he tells his grandmother, Muzar Sahigach, don't worry. And that stood out in my mind because I am a worrier, and I like that, hearing that. So that would stay with me, and then would read another story. And when she says, Ata Galelagu Gwenas, you haven't done well, my grandchild, I remember that. But she also told him, Gani Galoda Gwenas, I have great confidence in you, and I think of my grandchildren. So that just helps me. You can't learn the whole story after hearing it, but it grows on you and you remember some of them.
Sure. The repetitiveness helps, right?
Yes, I meant to mention that in the story about the medallion, because my language teacher told me that story is the basket in which we carry our language. And in that story, the animals, the people jump in and they turn around and they emerge, a beaver, a muskrat and all that. So from that cyclical telling, you learn the words. Yeah.
A couple questions in the chat room have come up.
Okay.
One is people are wondering, or Dina has asked, where is the book available?
Oh, Amazon and UMass Press.
All right. And Doug is asking, could you read another story? These are very interesting.
Sure. Yeah, we'd have time. It's only 7:24.
Thank you.
Well, that was the end of that one. Well, he does it again with the fish. It's hard because they laid it all out on the page. So that's kind of a duplicate of the animals. I'll read this one. Gluskab picked up a rocky point of land and he made his canoe from it. Then he hunted ducks in his stone canoe. He didn't really kill any ducks. The wind was always blowing. And this is foreshadowing for another story. He had a hard time in being able to paddle. Eventually, at one point, he got mad. He thought, what exactly is happening? The wind is so constantly blowing. Guskabi said, Grandmother, I want to look for it. Where does the wind blow from? Woodchuck said, my grandchild, it is very far away. Guskabi said, I am walking there, however far it is. I want to see who has made the wind. I will come back here quickly. Then he started off where the wind blows from is where he walked to. The more he walked, the more the wind blew. Eventually, after 7 days already, he could barely walk. The wind blew so much, his hair was all blown off in the wind. Eventually, he saw him flapping his wings, a supernaturally huge bird. Eventually, when he arrived walking there, barely where the great big bird was, then he said to him, my grandfather, couldn't you maybe make the wind blow more? Then the great big bird told him, my descendants, that is as much as I guess I can do. I thought he said, no, sis, my relative. Then Gluskab said to him, now, if you would sit higher, way over there, up on the hill where the mountain is high, then the wind would blow more, which is opposite of what he wanted, right? So he's being a bit of a trickster there. The bird said, I can't, my grandchild. Right here is where I've sat since the beginning. Then Gluskab said to him, my grandfather, I will help you. The bird said, if you can indeed help me, for sure, I will walk there, because I want everywhere I sit facing to have the wind blowing good. Then Gluskabi took the great big bird up on his back and carried him off. Eventually, where the ledge was high, there is where he let him slip on purpose. Then the great big bird fell and broke his wing. And this is where I say Chuayas is kind of accidentally on purpose. Then Gluskavi started off from there. Eventually, when he arrived walking at his house, he told his grandmother, well then, so now I will hunt ducks well. Now the wind will always be nice and calm. Sure enough, the wind was nice and calm. He continually hunted ducks. The wind was constantly calm. Eventually, even there was so much scummy water, he could not paddle at all. Then he told his grandmother, "It seems I will walk again to where the wind is, because the wind is constantly calm." So he started off for where the great big bird was. Eventually, when he got there, Gustav was not recognized by him, the bird, at all, because his hair had grown again. Then Gustav said to the great big bird, "My grandfather, how does it happen that your wind is always so calm?" "Well, so how it happened, a man came here walking. He was bald-headed. He was ugly. He wanted the wind to blow more. Then, however, I told him I couldn't do it. That's as far as I could do. Then he told me, then I will carry you off on my back to where the mountain is high." Then sure enough, when he carried me off on his back, he threw me down, then he hit me against the ground so that my wing broke. Now I have just one wing. Then Gustav told him, "My grandfather, I will walk you back again to where you had sat, and I will fix your wing." Then he said to him, "If indeed, my grandson, you can do that, I will be very happy. Already I am very tired of lying here." Then Gustav took him up on his back, and he walked him to where he had sat. Then he fixed his wing. Then he said to him, "Nah, my grandfather, try moving your wings." Then sure enough, the great big bird tried moving his wings. Gustav was blown over by the wind. Blumsuiga. Then the bird said, "I thank you very much, my grandchild." Then Gustav said to him, "My grandfather, now don't move your wings so constantly again, because when the wind blows constantly, our descendants cannot hunt for themselves at all. The wind blows so much whenever you move your wings. Our descendants cannot hunt ducks for themselves at all, because no one can paddle on the ocean. Now, if sometimes you would move your wings all day or for 2 days, so that our descendants, and then rest for a day, our descendants will be able to hunt ducks for themselves in the ocean." The bird said, "You are right, my grandson. Golami, I guess the wind blows too constantly. Now the wind will not blow so strong." Then Gustav started off to his house. So that was a good example of him starting to be a trickster with the grandfather bird. And other stories, it says that bird is up on Bamola Peak or somewhere up by Mount Katahdin, you know, the wind bird. Yeah, they call him Woodjousen.
That's interesting, Carol, because Barbara had put in the chat just before you started reading, all the stories I have read about Gustav has occurred on Katahdin. So she's wondering what the relationship between the two are.
Oh, I don't know, just some take place there. Katahdin, Katai means the elder, and Arden is the mountain part, it's the oldest mountain. That it's just a sacred place, a prominent place, you know. Yeah, there are other stories that happen there.
John is asking, are the stories metaphorical, do you think? Are there life lessons the storytellers are trying to communicate something to the listeners, or are they intended for entertainment?
Yeah, all of that, I think. There's a man that thinks there's another story about how the Penobscot River was formed from the frog that was holding all the water back. Haviland is his name. He thinks that story's so old that they're talking about when the glaciers melt and the water came down. So it could be metaphorical in that way, you know, could be all of that, because, you know, they're entertaining, they're teaching, and they tell maybe about some events that did happen. We don't know.
Some of the stories you've shared, Carol, almost feel like the sort of coming of age for this character, right?
Yes.
Learning the ropes, learning what's
Yeah.
going should happen,
Yeah.
or what's happened in the past. And I'm sitting here thinking, you know, do you share your story? You have 14 grandchildren. So
Yeah.
do you share these stories with your grandchildren now?
Yes, I have some printed out that I gave to my son, and I pass them out when I can. And in fact, these stories here today that I'm telling were just a mimeograph or Xerox copy, you know, so I used to make a lot of those up, and the department, you know, is where we had them, and I'd give those to my grandchildren's parents and, you know, my kids.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Dina, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that person's name correctly. I'm sorry if I'm not. I have a wooden board with etched leather with words here. I'm wondering if it can be translated if I spell it out. The only word I recognize is Micmac. By the way, hello, Barbara.
Well, yeah, spell it out. Did she spell it out?
No, but Dina, you can unmute and talk to us if you'd like.
If she'll push her space bar, it'll unmute for her.
Okay, I'm new to this.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
And we can see you.
Barbara and I used to work together at the school.
Ah, what are the letters?
Okay, here we go. This is, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, CEILTEACHDUIN, and then NA space HAONODHDHE, and on the other side it says NA with a little space H' MICMACBOIR, and then it says EANNACHAGUS.
Seal teach doing her.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't know if you could see it.
Yes.
Seal teach her doing.
That's a flat board. Yeah.
On the back it says,
No.
to my Allison with love from Pedro.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me, just a Micmac word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but no, that doesn't
Was worth a try.
ring a bell. I can't make tails or heads of it.
Yeah, it was in a home in Searsmont, Maine for 45-ish years.
Yeah.
And then the person that I got it from, it hung on her parents' mantle for those years. And she has passed since then.
Yeah.
So I have no history on it.
Yeah.
At all. But there's an Indian head at the bottom of it.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Somewhat. Oh, yeah. Huh. Yeah, sorry, I can't make heads or tails out of the word.
It's a very, very large board.
Yeah, beautiful.
And I haven't got a clue as to what this
Yeah.
means or represents at all.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure you will discover someday.
Yeah.
Someday.
And was I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes, it is pronounced Dina.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have others with questions or comments? Not seeing any, Carol.
No.
Just unmute and ask him.
Right, just do.
Hi.
Hi, Judith here. I was wondering if there is a rhythm when you're speaking Penobscot that changes when you're telling the story, because that's the traditional way of
Yeah.
telling and remembering.
Yes, there is a, I know what you mean, the rhythm to the stories, like just this Nadat Gezi Gizi Halawa, Guskabe Wadila Nikwa Baba Agwami Spabiane, Yenema Tagwagi Edeli Spataneg, Neba Agua Lumpson. And then if you're asking a question, your voice always goes up on the end.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and sometimes it's very hard to say the words, they're so long, but if you can get the rhythm to it and say a couple syllables and you know where the voice goes up and down, then you can get it. Like degni, it means in a while. Gwenas, yute abia nege gadoge. So there is a rhythm to it.
Thank you.
Connor tells us that it's usually 3 syllables from the end where our voice goes up, where when the Passamaquoddies talk, it's usually 2 syllables from the end. Yeah, they're
Is-
very sing-songy. Unlike us, we're not too sing-songy.
Like the Swedes. Is there a rhyming? Most human languages, the poetry comes before prose. So because it's a way of helping remember when we didn't
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah, a little bit. This old lady, well, Alberta, Frances told me, Chilachili Medekwazo Alami Sinogio. And it means the robin is down by the shore making a noise. And those 2 end envelopes, vowels kind of rhymed.
Mhm.
Because it helps us remember before
Yes.
we're writing.
Yeah, and we had a tradition of making little songs about each other.
Mhm.
And the old man up the road, Jerry Francis, he taught me some of those, you know, like, let's see. Oh, Nawitchka Wose Awen Gaduksu Gadupu Musquasawi. He's like, who is that coming walking? He's sleepy and hungry for muskrat meat. You know, it's a little song they sing about Mitch, not Mitch,
And
Henry Mitchell.
can I ask one more question?
Sure.
To what extent can you understand a Passamaquoddy?
Oh, pretty good.
Pretty
No,
good?
yeah, not a lot. I can get the beginning, like somebody start talking to me, but I love to listen to them. I don't care if I don't know
Yeah.
what they're saying. You listen enough, after a while, you do know, you know.
I understand the Micmacs are pretty different.
Oh my gosh, they can talk fast.
Yeah.
They're real fast. They could talk faster than I could think, I think.
Thank
But I
you.
understand some of their words. Yeah, sure.
Oh, really?
Wow. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for asking these questions. And Doug is asking, Carol, if you could talk about the organization of the tribes. I wonder if he means just in
Oh.
your area or Maine? or-
Yeah, well, traditionally, there was always a family that had traditional leadership in it. But also they were put up by the Wabanaki Confederacy, like the Neptunes were the sub-chief and the Attians were the chiefs. But in 1896, I think, there was a big rift in the tribe. There was a new party and the old party. And the priest kind of started the trouble. He got everybody, you know, mad at each other about an issue that really he shouldn't have brought up. But anyway, from there, the state came in and said, we'll bring you elections now. We'll help you solve your problem. We'll bring you an election. And that's when it changed over to that. So there's always a chief and a sub-chief and 12 council members. And they've been running the business, you know, ever since then. Well, we are like a business now with the federal government infrastructure. It's, you need to know a lot, you know, to run programs, and we've got directors that run programs, and it's all under the tribal council now. I don't think people knew that, you know, so that's a good question. Thank you for asking that. But we've governed ourselves for a long, long time.
Thanks, Carol.
Mhm.
I'm just going to pause to see if anybody else has any other questions, because there's one more request for another story.
Oh, really?
We could probably end with that, Carol, if you don't mind. But let me just wait to see while you're selecting. Let me wait to see if there are any other questions. If anybody wants to unmute or
Yeah.
Yes,
Carry
go
on.
right ahead.
The, all the stories, I haven't read the book yet, I will. But the stories mention hunting,
Yeah,
but they don't mention gathering.
no,
They don't mention plants. And we know that right about when the Europeans started coming here, Native Americans south of here were switching from gathering plants to farming.
oh,
But
yeah.
apparently hadn't got up this far yet. It probably, they tell me it got about as far as Saco River.
Oh, yeah, that's what I hear too. Well, if you have everything you need from the woods, why would you plant? You know,
Indeed.
yeah, you go down the ocean in the summer. I'm sure they gathered along the way, and then you come back up in August, everything must be ready then, you know, wild plants.
Yeah.
And you would gather again. But I think the women did that, and where this story, sometimes the men who came to study us were men, and they talk to the men, so you get more of the man story, you know, about hunting and all that.
So there may be references to gathering in the stories I haven't heard yet.
Well, I'm trying to think of all those ones I gathered. There aren't many mention of it. Oh, there are some about how people got to know a medicine through dreams and things like that. There
Uh-huh.
is a little bit about it.
Okay.
I can end with this 13th story about Gluskab. It said, then he headed off home, and when he got there, walking, Woodchuck was happy. Then Gluskabi said to her, well then now, I have fixed it so that it will never again be so hard a winter. I have finished working for our descendants. Now we will move away to the end of our land. There we will live forever. We will still work for our descendants. I will always hear them if they ask me for help. Then it will be now, then when I will be working there, making arrowheads. Maybe as the years go by, there is a great contest. These will be the ones our descendants use when they fight. Then Woodchuck said, well then I will make lunches of Bisataman. If there is a contest, they will be our descendants' lunches. Now, today, whenever he is told about in sacred stories, Gluskabi stops working for a moment. Then he raises his head and laughs. Then he says, yes, our descendants still remember me. And that's it. So that was the end of that series, but there's more after that too.
Thank you, Carol. We just have a couple last questions, if you don't mind, before we
No.
close out. John is saying, it's my understanding that they being the tribes were primarily a matriarchal society. The women were in charge, but did that change after Europeans arrived?
Well, if you remember, I was talking about Gluskabi and his grandmother, and the grandmother being the head of all the family matters, along with the chiefs. That's what, that again is your balance. And I don't understand the matrilineal, matriarchal, but that's the way it's stated in the stories. You know, we needed each other to take care of all our business. And I think it wasn't that much appreciated. And it probably did get slanted. Like I said, the men came and they wrote the stories, and they didn't catch, you know, what was really going on.
Dean is saying, can we see a sample of the inside pages of the book? Does it show side-by-side translation?
Oh, yeah, sure. It certainly does. One is in English and one is in Penobscot. I don't know whether you can see that, but
Yes,
they-
we can.
yeah, we laid it out that way so that you see, when you see this word, you know, this is what it means on the other side.
Very
And it
nice.
left a lot of space, but Connor said maybe kids would want to draw pictures or write notes or whatever, you know.
Absolutely.
It took a lot of room to do it that way, but We wrote it more for people who want to learn the language rather than linguists and, other people.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and then Dina followed up with very informative thank you. And I want to thank you. This has been such a treat to have you with us tonight. And you drew such a nice crowd for our library and our community. Thank you very much.
Okay, I
So-
enjoyed it. Thank you.
Very good. So I'm just going to end by saying that concludes our presentation for this evening. All of us at Vose Library thank you for attending our Vose or Virtual Wednesday series, and we hope that you'll spread the word and also join us on Wednesday, January 19th, when Christy Gardner shares her courageous story and how her work with her service therapy dogs has helped her and other veterans. Good night, be well, and stay healthy. Thanks, everybody.
Inachkina miyoba.